Welcome to the Longevity Forum podcast, a series on achieving longer, healthier, and more fulfilled lives for as many as possible. In this session, we're excited to hear a conversation between Lyndsey Simpson, founder of 55 Redefined, and Michael Clinton, founder of Roar Forward, on how they're redefining aging. And now to you, Lyndsey.
Welcome everybody to this podcast. It's delighted to bring together myself and Michael as two founders who are working the other sides of the Atlantic to each other, but on the global challenge that is our ageing population. So Michael, before we get into the nitty-gritty of our conversation today, should we kick off with some introductions? And perhaps you'd like to go first and share a little bit about who you are and what you and your businesses do.
Yeah, thank you, Lyndsey. After a 40-year magazine publishing career, I was most recently president and publishing director of First Magazines. I wrote a book called Roar, Into the Second Half of Your Life, which was really all about the individual embracing the new longevity and their possibilities, which has then led to a joint venture with Hearst, Roar Forward, which is a business intelligence platform for the new longevity era. For businesses, we do content and data and insights and workshops and events, really bringing the new longevity message to the business, academic, and nonprofit communities.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And for those of you that haven't come across 55 Redefined, we encompass three businesses in our group. So we have Life Redefined, which is a consumer platform all around life stage. So how do you get divorced? How do you get on the dating scene? How do you change your career, start again, and actually perhaps get that tattoo or move overseas? So whatever it is that you're looking to do to really redefine this next stage of life, Life Redefined is that cohort there. And then we have two B2B businesses. So Jobs Redefined is a marketplace around talent attraction. So how do older workers engage with, search and apply for roles with age-inclusive companies? And then our final business is Work Redefined. And within that business, we enable companies to attract, grow and engage over 50s talent to work for them and over 50s consumers to buy from them. And we work with the likes of Diageo to Amazon to AXA in all sectors as we really, like you, Michael, uncover how do we support the world to really embrace our ageing population. So tell us, you mentioned obviously you'd written a book, Roar, and I know that you then have a business that's around that. So what exactly is Roar? Does it stand for something? And what's Roar Forward all about?
So Roar, it's an acronym which stands for the reimagination process of your second half of life, owning your numbers and where you are, an action plan that we call life layering, which is one of our trademark programs in terms of helping individuals do that. And then the relationship reassessment all around you, people that can help you get to where you want to go. That's really targeted to the consumer. And we have a monthly newsletter that people can sign up for. It's free. We have over 20,000 subscribers. But our business is really B2B, or B2B to C. So we work with over 50 companies. We have a great set of content called the Roar Report and 26 bulletins, which educate company leadership all about the new longevity phenomena. And it's a global base of subscriptions. And off of that, we do a variety of consultancies and workshops. We license content, we produce content. It's really, we're basically a content company that works in the B2B space or the B2B to C space. But we don't spend, like you, we don't spend a lot of our initiatives direct to consumer, so to speak.
No, that's really helpful. And it's why I think we've become friends because we are complementing each other's business. So we, are not a publisher in the same way of producing that kind of digital content. And we focus really on solving what boils down to three business challenges that our corporates have.
Yep.
First of all, they have a skills issue. So they either have skills in this age group that they have to retain. They could be mainframe engineers, they could be actuaries, they could be physical engineers, or people with long client relationships. But they have this skills issue where we're needing to add at least 10 years onto people's working careers so that we don't lose them out from our critical industries. They then have a data issue, and yet we haven't found a company anywhere in the world who has truly got underneath the impact of age on their workforce data. So we're a data partner to them, analysing that workforce analysis, forecasting it forward, and then helping them see what the opportunities and the risks are when we see and look at data. And to give you a couple of examples which translate everywhere in the world, people who assume that over 50s will get ill more often. Yet we know that from the data that an over 50s employee is 200% less likely to take a day off work sick. We also know that in subsegments, like in hospitality, retail, contact centres, that attrition is a real challenge in those high volume areas. And again, we know that if they start hiring over 50s in that demographic, they're 5 times less likely to change job in the first 12 months, which brings down that attrition cost. And then the final piece that we kind of kick on is legal. So because age is a protected characteristic in so many of our markets around the world, it becomes a bit of a hot potato where people leaders don't know how to engage with people in this demographic. So they have these clumsy conversations with somebody who's maybe 52 that starts with, so when are you going to retire? And then they wonder why they end up in a discriminatory court saying, well, I don't know, 25 years, why are you asking me? So these are the types of business challenges. And so content complements what we do and obviously gives them the ability to be longevity literate. But really, we're working two sides of the same coin, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
well, on that mind, I mean, I'm keen, given your Hearst background, that we dip into some of the social movement. We've seen brands like Dove change their brand from a white dove to a grey dove in support of Lisa LaFlame in Canada when she was exited for letting her hair go grey. And the luxury brands start to skew to this position. I've seen some of your brilliant content around these luxury brands and magazines that are now tapping into this demographic. So what progress are you seeing stateside around age, social norms and ageism?
Well, we're beginning to see I would argue that our country is behind the UK and other countries in the EU and in Asia, and that we are still very, very age phobic. But we're beginning to see a pro-age movement, and it's really being led by amazing women like Oprah Winfrey, who just turned 70. And, Meryl Streep is 75 and Jennifer Lopez is 55. And, we're beginning to see people really come forward and be pro-age. And that is really important because celebrity images, advertising, all of the things that, send out the signals that this is what the new 60, 70, 80 looks like is important. We have a half-day project with the Association of National Advertisers, which is an American-based trade group for all of the marketers and brands. And we have a half-day seminar workshop with all of the marketing community about how they have to rethink and relook at their visuals, their words, their representation, because a lot of it is very stereotypical. And as we've discussed, Lyndsey, age is the last bastion of discrimination, but and it doesn't get called out the way other things get called out, and really raising the awareness in terms of impacting social norms and so forth. Our challenge in America is that many companies don't include age in their DEI policy. The good news there is there's a sort of a reframing on the I of DEI here. So inclusivity, which is now beginning to give age a spotlight. What I like to say is that regardless of your age, your gender, your race, your religion, your politics, everyone's going to face age discrimination. So collectively, we as a body of people need to address this. So we're making progress in the U.S., but I would say we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, and we are all going to be a day older tomorrow than we are today. And often we hear some of our younger customers say, well, actually, if I don't address it now, I'm just discriminating against my future self. So if we then, switch from, I suppose, that consumer and advertising lens into the corporate space, what best practice can you share, Michael, from the corporates you've been working with, and what more do you think is needed on that side?
Well, I think, one of my great examples is Estee Lauder, where we have a big project with. And you're probably familiar, for the listeners who are in the EU and in the UK, their campaign Because of My Age, which I think is a really brilliant example of how a major company is leaning into the whole second half constituency with their products. What we know in America, for example, is that the 50 plus consumer, $8.3 trillion of spending power, would be the third largest country in the world in GDP. The other thing we know is that the first millennials turn 50 in 6 years, and that is a huge generation. So the 50 plus spending power, asset base, changing attitudes is profound, but you need storytelling around the data because people need to see the data come to life. And I think, Lauder's a great example of a company with their Because of My Age campaign. You mentioned Dove, which is another great example. In Burberry, we just saw that Olivia Colman, is in the campaign. What's interesting is that people always have an editorial comment about who's right or who's wrong for a campaign. You know, if it's somebody who is, too stylized, they complain about that. If somebody is not as stylized, they complain about that. But what I say is showing representation of great men and women over 50 in corporate campaigns, as an example, is a really important step. That goes hand in hand with what companies are doing for their customers as well as for their employees. But we love showing best practices of who's out there doing it right.
And you're right about the power of the spend. I mean, over 50s digital spend has already overtaken every other age group in the UK. And by 2040, 62p in every pound will be spent by an over 50s digital consumer. And we also then see that reflected in the workforce data. So by 2030 in the UK, 50% of all workers will be aged over 50. So when you're talking about the I in the DE and I, you're quite right that Europe has been, I would say, probably about 5 to 10 years ahead of the US and North American nations, just because we have had a more aged population. And less migration. And so, we already have countries and nations that are well below the replacement rate for the population. So we know that the workforce is shrinking. And therefore, the only way that you can have a growth strategy is by having an age strategy as a corporate, because they're the only growth of talent that you can go and hire. And they're the only growth of consumers that you can sell to. So tell us a little bit, Irina. I'm a self-confessed ageaholic, Michael. I eat, breathe, sleep, age, and I know you do as well. The research, the data, which is just mind-blowing around the world. But the thing that I always come back to of the word, and it's a word that we use and you've used in your book, which is around curiosity. People often ask me if I could bottle what makes for a healthy, longer, later life. It's that you do have this curiosity in you to continue to learn, continue to grow, and therefore continue to train your brain to develop. You mentioned curiosity in your book. How would you say that changes throughout life?
Well, the big debate is always, of course, is it nature or nurture? And, we have, great examples of 90-year-olds who continue to be as curious about what's going on, and whether it's AI or new kinds of developments in medicine or, the world politics. I think what's really important, and one of the big messages we have, is that you have to be a lifelong learner and you have to be a lifelong student, especially since you're going to live a lot longer. And you also have to, the world is going to force us to do that. Look at how the digital world forced us to adapt and change and learn. It's organic in many ways. And so the world pushes us forward, but really what's more important is to be proactive on that front. In our book, we have a whole concept called life layering. You are in the first half of your life, you're defined by your 3 Ps pretty much. You're partnering, you're parenting, perhaps your profession. But then as you get into your second half, those are there, but they are diminished. Your kids grow up and go away. Hopefully your partner sticks around. Professions evolve. But if you're 50 and healthy and you're going to live to be 90, who are you going to be over those next 40 years? That really requires thinking, curiosity, introspection, action in order to have a meaningful, purposeful, 40-year life post 50. And this is really the social movement that you and I've always talked about. It's a new script and a new construct that the Western world has not really, thought about. We inherited an old script that's irrelevant now. So it's changing, and the people who are the most curious, we call them the Reimagineers. You can see them on our website, roarforward.com. They're the ones who are the curious ones leading this charge. So curiosity is such an important trait.
It is, and we've joked, I know, in the past about we have then the redefiners that we have, but it's about you can't be what you can't see. So sometimes people just need to see these brilliant examples of normal people who are doing extraordinary things in this next stage of life and challenging those previous stereotypes. I mean, there's something that's I suppose that sneak preview for those on this podcast here, but we're pilot testing at the moment a new enterprise platform called Me Redefined. And the strapline to that is be inspired, not retired. And so it's one of these ones where we've got it US and in the UK for various global corporates. But it's the first time we've seen consumer and corporate merge. So what it is, the platform is for individuals. They're in the movie of their life, but the script is only halfway written. So how do we help them programmatically to define what is it they're going to do, have a plan, and then have confidence in executing the plan? But the bit that's then important for us, a bit like you as a B2B organisation, is then what's the deal for the employer who are paying for all of this? Well, is they're suddenly getting data and sentiment. They can suddenly see and forecast what that workforce is going to do and what their plans to do and how they can influence that and change it. And lean in so that we can add years to careers and get rid of this massive pension savings gap that we have across the globe. So, I mean, I'm really keen to really, I suppose, I know we're short on time. As always, you and I could talk for this for months on end on the topic. But I would like us to kind of come together, I suppose, Michael, with some top tips. And so we've talked about consumers and we've talked about corporates. Perhaps let's split it into both. So could you share your top 3 recommendations for individuals over 50 exploring this next stage of life?
Yeah, thank you, Lyndsey. And as always, we have so many things to talk about. The number one thing for me is always self-imposed ageism that we all take on because of the cultural cues and everything that's sent to us. Stepping back and getting beyond the self-imposed ageism, I can't do this because of my age, I can't do that because of my age, is really self-defeating. And so our number one, call, and that's whether it's individuals or companies, is get rid of the self-imposed ageism and be a leader and an age innovator, as we say. Part 2 to that, the second tip is, 50% of it is prep work before you even activate a plan. You have to really think about what is the plan. Too many people fly by the seat of their pants and say, well, I kind of figure it out when the reality hits me. Start that process early to build a roadmap of reimagination as to what the next stage and phase will be. And if you want to work another 10 years at the age of 60, what is that going to look like? Like, what do you need to do? To your point, how do you reskill? How do you upskill and so forth? And the third thing I would say, and you touched on it, is look for the role models. Look for the inspirational people around you, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your communities. They are there. They are much like women led the charge in the women's movement to redefine women's roles in the world at large. And look what an amazing place we are today, with still progress to be made. But those role models, those women who led the charge, are the ones who other women look at. So who are the people over 50 who you're inspired by, who are doing amazing things? Learn from them. Let them teach you. Let them give you, insights and knowledge. So those are my 3.
They're brilliant, those. So on that, removing those ageist beliefs of yourself, we know now, after that brilliant study by Becca Levy, that took decades to do, that you will actually knock 7.6 years off your own life expectancy if you are that person who holds ageist beliefs. So don't just believe us, believe the fact that you are reducing your own life expectancy if you train your brain that you can't do things, or you can. I love the purpose and plan. That's obviously why we've set up Me Redefined. And our advice there is stop sleepwalking. I think people are like sleepwalking off of a cliff, just doing what society expects. And so I think you're right, we can make them awake to that. And on the category of role models, something that I suppose I would like to share with the listeners here is to perhaps refer to your age in levels. So rather than saying, I'm 52 or I'm 63 or I'm 45, say I'm level 52, I'm level 63. Because when you think of it in levels, it's a little bit like achieving a game, and that you want to then be level 70, and I really want to be a level 100. And it just kind of brings a little bit of fun and gamification rather than some of the negativity that we've had entrenched in us over the years.
Love that.
So then let's flip this over to corporate leaders. So for anyone who's leading a company and grappling with either that aging customer base or aging workforce, what would be your top 3 tips there?
Thank you. The first is be aware of this phenomena of the dramatically changing demographic, because it impacts everything you do. You talked earlier about an age strategy. I met a woman, I gave a keynote at a university summit in Lisbon, Portugal, and I met a woman who has the title of longevity marketing. And I think it's for a major Portuguese company. I love that because there is an awareness that senior management has. A lot of thought leaders are saying there are 3 things that leadership needs to focus on: AI, obviously, climate and its impact, and the changing demographic that's happening around the world. So first of all, be aware of it. It's coming, it's here, it's coming faster and faster. It affects your products, your services, your customers, your people, number 1. Number 2, lean into your aging consumer base. I think the cautionary note is the troubles that Nike are going through. Nike was built on the backs of the boomers, and they never followed through with cultivating the boomer and the Gen X market. They're so obsessed with 18 to 34. So many of the boomers left Nike for Hoka, and Hoka's grabbed huge market share. So lean into your customer base. Don't get, this syndrome of we stop targeting people at 54. It's a 20th century construct that needs to be blown up. And I think that's really important. And then the third piece, and you touched on it, is the seismic impact of the talent drain. I wrote a piece for Esquire called "The Seismic Impact That's About to Hit the American Workplace." You can access that on our website under Thought Leadership. It is really making C-suite leadership aware that they're going to have massive talent issues. And so they have to be rethinking how they treat their 50 plus employees by retraining them, reskilling them. You and I both know about the commitment that in France, the charter has, the 47 companies that have signed a commitment to enhance and promote their 50 plus employee. We need to keep them in the workplace contributing longer. So this talent drain is a big, big issue for leadership.
That's really helpful. And do you know what? We're going to give our listeners a treat today because I have 3 different ones. So they're going to get 6 free tips that they can take away and implement from tomorrow. The first one is extend and do your own age audit. And by that, I mean, go onto your own website, look at your career pages, look at your adverts, and just see the images and the wording that you're using to present your business, and see just generally how ageist the majority of that is. And so there's some very, very quick and simple changes that you can do if you do your own age audit. Secondly, we talk a lot around multi-gen, and I think most workforces now have got a multi-gen workforce with 4 or 5 generations together. Your mission as leaders is to create an intergenerational workforce. So multi-gen is just what you end up with by virtue of people being different ages, but it doesn't mean they like each other, doesn't mean they work well together, doesn't mean they're not slinging insults around them being a snowflake and unresilient or a boomer that can't get tech. And so by purposefully bringing intergenerational teams together to solve problems, to solve advertising, Michael, like you've talked to. So if I'm going to do an ad campaign, I want every generation in the team creating the ads. If I'm going to build an AI project, I need every generation in the team building and testing the AI product. And when you create intergen, you create magic. And then the final one is around data. You have to analyze your workforce data. You have to know what it means by age. What does that mean in terms of cost, absenteeism, revenue per head, forecast forward over the next 5-10 years. And you will see some massive trends which present huge opportunities for growth, and also probably some cliff edge risks in departments and locations that you need to shore up. So I've been Lyndsey Simpson, the founder and CEO of 55 Redefined. I've been absolutely delighted to join up with Michael Clinton from Raw and Raw Forward. I really hope you've enjoyed listening to us today and enjoy the rest of your day.
This broadcast has been brought to you by the Longevity Forum as part of Longevity Week 2024. We are very grateful to our sponsors, M42 Health and Juvenescence. For more podcasts, visit our website, thelongevityforum.com, or follow us on Twitter, longevity_forum.